All right, black and white sports supporters, let's talk about the Indiana Fever. Next week, April the 3rd, there will be an expansion draft. And many people are wondering, how is that going to shape out? There's a way you can core players. You figure Kelsey Mitchell's probably one of those. Lexi Hull, I would guess, would be one of those. Caitlyn Clark, Aaliyah Boston, check.
The words were spoken behind closed doors. However, the shock waves are hitting the streets of Indianapolis right now. The Indiana Fever are staring down a total roster collapse, as the expansion draft prepares to rip the heart out of Caitlyn Clark's supporting cast. Sophie Cunningham, the woman who literally fought to protect the Rookie of the Year, is now officially on the chopping block. It is a cold-blooded business move, one that has the locker room in a state of pure panic. The enforcer who kept the peace is being treated like a disposable asset, and the fans are absolutely losing their minds over the betrayal. This is a crisis that nobody saw coming.
Expansion draft big board. I didn't know those existed, but we've got an expansion draft big board, and Khloe Bibby is on it. Now, you may be like, well, there'll be better players than Khloe Bibby available. That's true. But we got to remember there's two teams, and they still have to adhere to the salary cap too. So they can't put a bunch of $700,000 players on one team. They got the same restrictions from a salary cap standpoint as everybody else. So that will limit the players that they're able to take. They're able to, each of them will be able to take, like, for example, a supermax player, something like that.
Everyone is talking about the Golden State Valkyries and the new Portland franchise as if they are just friendly additions to the league, but for the Fever, they are predators. The expansion draft rules are brutal and designed to strip the top teams of their depth, to jumpstart the newcomers. Indiana has a core that the entire league envies, but the rules only allow them to protect a handful of names. When you have a roster overflowing with talent like Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull, someone legendary is going to be left out in the cold. The vultures are circling the Gainbridge Fieldhouse right now.
We believe that it's likely Sophie Cunningham will not be protected. We did not get to see what this truly would have looked like over 44 games. That's a damn shame. Because Caitlyn Clark and Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull and Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell would have been real fun to watch over 44 games, and because of Caitlyn's injury, we didn't get to see what that looks like. The other thing that not a lot of people have brought up is, how about this is the only player to ever physically defend Caitlyn Clark on a basketball court.
Sophie Cunningham isn't just another player on the roster, she is the physical shield for Caitlyn Clark. We all saw what happened last season, when the league tried to welcome the rookie with elbows and hard fouls. Sophie was the one standing in the gap, the enforcer who made sure nobody messed with the face of the franchise. Fever fans fell in love with her grit, her Steven Seagal-style takedowns, and her refusal to back down from anyone. Losing her doesn't just lose a shooter, it loses the team's backbone. If she is gone, who stops the next veteran from taking a cheap shot at Caitlyn?
A lot of people have brought up is, how about this is the only player to ever physically defend Caitlyn Clark on a basketball court. The enforcer. J.C. Sheldon is still thinking twice about some of the shit that she's ever going to pull again. Never know when somebody's going to do a Steven Seagal, a keto flip on your ass like Sophie Cunningham did last year. So this is Grant Young over at SI. So it would be hard for the Fever fans to part ways with Sophie Cunningham.
A new expansion draft big board just dropped, and it sent shock waves through the Indiana front office because the names on it are devastating. While everyone was focused on the superstars, names like Khloe Bibby started climbing into the top 10. Bibby, known to many as Red, has been a silent assassin from the three-point line, hitting over 40% of her triples in the WNBA. She is the kind of cost-controlled asset that expansion teams dream of. The fact that she is even being discussed as a primary target proves that the Fever's depth is being scouted like never before. It is a total takeover.
Weren't trying to cancel her. By the way, Remember the three-point contest? And I made a video last year where I was banging the drum that it should be Sophie Cunningham actually instead of Lexi Hull. You know why I said that? And at the time I brought up the statistics. It was because over basically a 15 or 20 game stretch, Sophie Cunningham was the best three-point shooter on the Indiana Fever. She sure does hustle. She sure is a spark plug. She plays defense. She hits clutch threes. Just throwing that out there.
The Fever only have one core designation to use this off-season, and that creates a massive political nightmare within the building. Most experts agree that the tag has to go to Kelsey Mitchell, to keep her from walking away for nothing. But by prioritizing Mitchell, the front office is essentially leaving Sophie Cunningham out in the open market. It is a high-stakes game of musical chairs, where the music is about to stop, and Sophie might find herself without a seat in Indiana. You cannot pay everyone the max, and you cannot protect everyone from the draft. The budget is tightening every single day.
WNBA is a business, and as much as everybody wants Cunningham back in Indianapolis, the Fever are between a rock and a hard place. I don't think it's even a matter of whether they're going to protect her for this expansion draft. I think it is more so she will get offered a salary that is going to price her out of being on the Indiana Fever squad, unless Kelsey Mitchell is not brought back. That is the only way. All right? We got to remember, somebody could offer Lexi Hull a contract.
You have to look at the cold, hard numbers, because the WNBA salary cap is a ruthless beast that does not care about your feelings. An expansion team can walk in and offer Sophie a supermax contract that the Fever literally cannot match without gutting the rest of their roster. If a new team offers her that life-changing money, she would be crazy not to take it. Indiana is caught between a rock and a hard place, trying to balance the books while keeping Caitlyn Clark surrounded by shooters. The financial reality is that the Fever might be priced out of their own culture very soon.
Would be protecting somebody who essentially they can't control, regardless of whether she's selected by an expansion team. That's a risk Indiana's front office would be wise not to take. So they could protect her, but then they could lose her in free agency anyway. So that's another good reason to not try to protect her. And then we come over here to the Athletic, and that's Khloe Bibby. That's red, as I like to call her. That is red. 6'2", she can shoot 35.5% from three.
There is a lingering sense of what if haunting this entire situation, because we never got to see this full squad play together for a complete season. Between injuries and the chaotic start to the Caitlyn Clark era, that lineup of Mitchell, Hull, Clark, Boston, and Cunningham only teased us with its potential. It is a DMN shame that, just as the chemistry was beginning to sizzle, the expansion draft is threatening to blow it all up. Fans are mourning a season that never truly reached its peak, fearing that the best version of the Fever was something we only saw in brief, brilliant flashes.
Or get thrown out of a club, in Miami, because of Unraveled. She's number one on the board. And yeah, I kid because I literally don't care. Okay. I mean, I ain't worried about Enrique at all. Oh, but Rhodes, she scores 18 a game from shooting 49 shots. You know, once again, calling it like I said. I mean, yeah, from going 7 for 39 from the field. Yeah, pass on that. Expansion teams can take her off.
Even if the Fever decide to use one of their precious protected spots on Sophie, there is no guarantee she stays in Indianapolis. She is a free agent, which means the team could protect her from the draft, only to watch her sign with another team 2 weeks later. It is a massive gamble that the front office might not be willing to take. Why waste a protection slot on someone you do not actually control? This creates a rift between the players and management, as the lack of a long-term commitment makes everyone feel expendable. The trust that built the 2024 season is being tested by logic, while everyone is focused on the stars, the contract of Michaela Thompson is looming large over the decision-making process. Because of how her deal is structured, many believe the Fever are forced to keep her around just for the sake of the salary cap. This puts Sophie Cunningham in an even more precarious position. If Thompson is a lock because of her contract, and the big three are locks because of their talent, Sophie is the odd woman out. It is a brutal numbers game, where your value on the court can be outweighed by the fine print, and someone else's legal documents in the office. While the Fever are in chaos, other teams are dealing with their own drama, like Eric A. Gunball being ranked as the #1 expansion target. Some people think she is the ultimate prize, but real students of the game see the red flags. She scores 18 a game, but takes nearly 40 shots to get there. The Dallas Wings might actually be relieved to see her go. But for Indiana, their players are the opposite. They are efficient, team-oriented, and vital to the ecosystem. The Fever are not looking to dump salary, they are desperately trying to hold on to their identity right now. You have to wonder what Caitlyn Clark is thinking, as she watches her favorite teammates get put on the trade block or left unprotected. She came to Indiana to win championships, and Sophie Cunningham was a massive part of that vision. If the front office lets Sophie walk, they risk upsetting their generational superstar before she even hits her second year. The chemistry between Clark and Cunningham was undeniable, both on and off the court. Messing with that dynamic is like playing with fire, and the Fever might just end up getting burned if they do not handle this with care. There were times last season when the Fever looked flat, and it was always Sophie who provided the spark. Whether it was a clutch three or a defensive stop that shifted the momentum, she was the heartbeat of the arena. When the woke crowd tried to cancel her, she just played harder. When the media ignored her, she hit bigger shots. That kind of mental toughness is rare, and it is exactly what a young team like Indiana needs to survive the playoffs. If you remove that engine, you are left with a high-performance car that simply will not start when the pressure is at its highest. Let's go back to Khloe Bibby for a second, because her presence on the expansion big board is a massive warning sign. She is currently playing overseas and lighting it up, proving that the Fever have a knack for finding hidden gems. But that talent discovery is a double-edged sword. The better these players perform, the more likely they are to be snatched away by teams with nothing to lose. BBY represents the budget-friendly, elite talent that expansion teams crave. If the Fever lose her and Sophie in the same window, the depth that made them dangerous will evaporate overnight. Remember the three-point contest, where people were begging for Sophie to be included? I was banging the drum for her because her statistics over that 20-game stretch were undeniable. She was not just a physical presence, she was the best shooter on the roster. That versatility is what makes her future so debated. You are not just losing a defender, you are losing a floor spacer who demands respect from every defense in the league. If she lands in Golden State or Portland, she is going to make the Fever regret every second they spent hesitating on her contract extension. The pressure on the Fever's management right now is astronomical. They are the most watched team in the league, and every move they make is scrutinized by millions of new fans. If they blow this expansion draft, the backlash will be legendary. They are trying to build a dynasty around Caitlyn and Aaliyah, but dynasties require a supporting cast that is willing to bleed for the team. By leaving Sophie Cunningham's future hanging in the balance, they are sending a message to the locker room that nobody is safe. It is a dangerous game of chicken, with the team's morale on the line. If Sophie leaves, the defensive identity of the Indiana Fever takes a massive hit. She was the one willing to do the dirty work, the one who was not afraid to get a technical foul if it meant protecting her teammates. Without her, the Fever become a much nicer team, and in the WNBA, being nice gets you steamrolled by the veterans. We saw Jay Selden and others think twice about their antics when Sophie was on the floor. Without that deterrent, the target on Caitlyn Clark's back is going to grow even larger, and there might not be anyone left to push back against the bullies. Seeing Khloe Bibby at number 11 on the expansion big board was a wake-up call for many fans who have not been paying attention to the international scene. She is hitting over 40% of her triples and is a reserve free agent, meaning her new team would only have to pay her the league minimum. That is a gold mine for an expansion team trying to stay under the cap. The Fever are essentially a talent farm for the rest of the league right now. It is the price of success, but it feels like a punishment for drafting and developing players so effectively in Indiana. One of the most overlooked rules in the expansion draft is that the new teams can offer a veteran supermax to players they select. This is a game changer for someone like Sophie Cunningham. She knows she will not get that kind of money from Indiana because of their cap constraints. If she is picked, she gets a massive raise in a starting role on a brand new franchise. For a player in her late 20s, that kind of financial security is impossible to turn down. The Fever are essentially fighting against a system that is rigged to lure their best veterans away with cash. While the expansion draft is the main event, there are secondary distractions, like the unrivaled league and the various agendas being pushed by other stars. You see players like Enrique making headlines for the wrong reasons, but Sophie and the Fever have stayed focused on the court. That focus is exactly why they are in this mess. They played too well, and now everyone wants a piece of what they have built. The chaos is not just internal, it is a result of the entire league shifting its gravity toward Indiana. The Fever are the sun, and everyone else is trying to steal their light. The countdown is on, and every day that passes without a leak or a contract announcement makes the fans more anxious. April 3rd will be a day of reckoning for the Fever. We will finally see if the front office values the enforcer role, or if they are moving toward a more corporate, less gritty version of the team. The tension in Indianapolis is thick enough to cut with a knife right now. This is not just about basketball, it is about the soul of the team. Sophie Cunningham represents old-school toughness that fans adore, and her departure would mark the end of an era. If Sophie Cunningham is taken, the ripple effect will be felt through the entire roster. Lexi Ho will have to step up even more, and the pressure on the younger players to provide veteran leadership will skyrocket. The Fever will have to scramble in the remaining free agency period to find a replacement who can provide even half of what Sophie brought to the table. You cannot just replace a player who does, Steven Seagal, moves on opponents. That kind of energy is organic, and once it is gone, it is almost impossible to manufacture in a locker room that is already feeling the pressure. As the expansion teams finalize their big boards, the Fever are forced to look in the mirror and decide who they really are. Are they a team that protects its own at all costs, or are they a cold-blooded business that views players as assets to be traded and lost? The decision regarding Sophie and Khloe will define the next 5 years of the Caitlyn Clark era. If they lose the players who protected her, they are essentially leaving their franchise player out on an island. It is a high-stakes gamble with the highest possible consequences in women's sports, and for Indiana fans, the reality of the WNBA is that growth comes with a heavy price, and the Indiana Fever are the ones footing the bill this time around. Sophie Cunningham's future hanging in the balance is a symptom of a league that is expanding faster than its rules can accommodate. Whether she stays or goes, the chaos of this off-season has already changed the Fever forever. We might look back at this expansion draft as the moment the league tried to break Indiana's momentum. But if there is one thing we know about this team, it is that they thrive when their backs are against the wall.